Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain. That is Coach Kenny Simpson. We are joined tonight by my current head coach, Chris Cole. Coach, thanks for – it's late at night. It's late Wednesday, so appreciate you for staying up late and knocking out a podcast with us.
Oh, man. Thank you guys for having me.
We're very complimentary of what you're doing over there at Bristow. Obviously, I know where you came from. I didn't know that you had been at Bristow before, so that was news to me. I guess I just don't know the coaching circles as well as I thought I did, but it's got to be cool for you to go home, huh? And go back and take over.
Yeah, it is. It's I guess most people I'm spending 5 years at Bixby, sort of the pinnacle of Oklahoma high school football was it's kind of what I got known to be as people that know me now anyways. But no, actually his first job right out of college was right here in Bristow, Oklahoma. Met my wife and took her down to my actual hometown of Stigler and played Bristow in the playoffs that first year. And then we got married and I wanted to have kids. And she said, well, if we're going to have kids, we need to be closer to her family. So we came back to Bristow and did a year here. And shortly thereafter, I got the lucky to get the job at Bixby and was there for the last 5 years. And then, yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool because my wife stayed here the entire time I was at Bixby. I was traveling about 45 minutes one way, in football season, 7 days a week, with 2 kids. And my wife was the head cheer coach at Bristow, so it's not like we were moving. So when this job came open, it was an opportunity that we had to at least explore. And yeah, it was really, really good. Like I said, it's not like walking into the interview was. Like, I think everyone in the interview kind of hugged me except for one guy. So it was a cool, I knew everyone that was there, know everyone that's here. And so, yeah, it was a difficult choice to leave Bixby just because of, you're surrounded by, a lot of like-minded people and a lot of people that help you grow. But,
right.
When you get Coach Montgomery's blessing to, go down there, take care of your family and see if you can do this thing, it made a good choice for me to come down here, and I've enjoyed it.
For sure. It's been neat. I know I'm on the outside, and those of y'all that don't know, I'm coaching with Bristow this year, but I'm just there on game nights. I'm like an external analyst, so it's been a lot of fun. But, watching the coaches grow and the players have definitely came a long way. We're in week 10 right now. This is Wednesday night of week 10 of the football season for 2024, and it's been really neat watching from the outside. So I'm sure you get picked up a lot of things watching a successful football staff operate, right? Before we turn the cameras on here, I was telling Chris that it's really neat to see him as a first-year head coach to give all play calling responsibilities to other people. Like he's neither the OC nor the DC, and like there's other guys making all, and that's bewildering. But that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. Is we're going to talk getting buy-in. And that's one way to do it, right? Give some ownership. But that's something I think you can also do when a school's had some success. You're not trying to build a whole new culture there. So that's pretty neat. Coach Simpson, 9-0, trying to go 10-0 this week.
Yeah, that's the hope. One at a time. We were able to have a pretty big win and kind of sew things up last week. So that was good for our kids, for conference champs. And obviously that's a goal every season. And now trying to stay motivated to get better, because everybody here knows, no one really remembers regular season champions. That's fun. You can put a banner up, that's cool, but they remember what you do in the playoffs. And so we're hoping we can continue to improve. I'm sure y'all are too. That's what makes or breaks good or great seasons.
For sure. This season, in my perspective, has been the most. I think we're 5-4 right now, right? We're going to go and hopefully be 6-4 after week 10. But it feels like the most successful, the most high-powered 5-4 season I've ever experienced. And weirdly enough, I've been a 500 coach like at multiple places. At Stillwell, we were we went 5-5 at Wyandotte. We were 4-4 in a COVID year. Like, but there was weeks there that you just felt like we don't have anything. We have nothing to offer right now. And it's not been that way at Bristol. It's been a lot of fun. But when you schedule up, you play some really good teams in your non-district play. I mean, that kind of stuff happens, right? That's two losses right there that could have been cupcake teams, but we wouldn't have learned anything. So
it's a wild. Hopefully it'll pay off. I mean, that's the goal. If it doesn't pay off, then you got to reevaluate and recalculate. But generally, playing up helps.
That post-game speech of week 3, which was the Wagner Bulldogs, which have been, year in and year out right now, they're kind of the 4A. I mean, they're expected to be the champions. And it's nice after that game to go, that's the toughest game you're going to play all year. Like, the hard one's out of the way. Let's just go play football now, right? So that helps. All right, gents. Coach Simpson, why don't you tell us some ways here that we can simplify football for our coaches and our players? What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. The longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. We're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for your that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, all right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
Appreciate that, Coach. You guys, those ads, we keep carrying those people because, which 2 out of 3 are us, so we carry ourselves because we like what we sell. But if you haven't reached out to the guys about a video board yet, it's just such a crazy cheat code for fundraising to just have a video board at the end of your field. So if you don't have one, get one. Bristow, Coach Cole. Get you a video board.
Right.
There we go. Coach, I know you got a new book out, new Gun T book, continuing the series here. What do we got going on there?
Yeah, so the 6.0 is out. I think we sold, my wife basically told me quit sending emails. I think we sold out of the first batch of them, but we ordered more, and she says they're supposed to be in. So probably by the time this comes out, they'll be in. But basically every year you evolve your offense. So This year in the book, we have a lot of new RPOs that we're running. We've got some unbalanced stuff that we're doing. It's really good. Some two tight end unbalanced stuff that's been pretty good for us. We're running option, and so that all that new wrinkles we just add in the books. It's all over at fbcoachsimpson.com.
And if you haven't gotten his books yet, Kenny's books are nice because they build from the foundation every book, right? And if you bought the whole series, you go, well, I don't need the first 2 chapters of any of them because, I've already got it in these other books. But it's nice to start there. You just need any of the one, unless you want all the wrinkles. And I love that it builds on itself, right? You started with the simple buck stuff, and now you're running all these other things. So really good series to get into. What is it? fbcoachsimpson.com. Is that where it's
Yes, sir. I get that. And then the clinics, so the clinics, I meant to mention that too. We're starting to fill up actually, which is, we're all playing football. So I know I'm not looking at clinics we're going to go to except for the ones that we're hosting, but I know that I've been getting hit up. So we went ahead and put the dates out. They're all over at fbcoachsimpson.com under clinics. And I think all the way through November, we're running like the early bird pricing. It helps me to prepare to have guys register early. And that's the only reason we do that. We just have to bump the price up later because then I got to make other arrangements. So we're in 9 different places, hosting one here in Arkansas, the national one, all the way in Seattle, Phoenix, Boston. So there's a place for you if you want to come hear some gun tea. Daniel, I'm trying to get talked into coming to Boston. So we'll see if that happens or not.
Hey, I already talked to the wife. I think it's a go. So I just got to build the clinic now, right? That's going to be the shining spot in my career, is just doing a clinic for Coach Simpson. So you guys find one of those you can and sign up for it. Sign up now, sign up early. The national one is going to be the big one. If you want to see the most coaches and it's a lot of fun. I always go to the national one no matter what. I just think it's a ton of fun. It's good to catch up. Bring your own bottle of bourbon or you'll go broke trying to pay.
Yeah, we got the guy that's going to win the gift card. He's coming from Alaska. He registered today. So he's flying from Alaska. Nice. He said, I'm going to fly anyway. Which one would you go to? I said, well, I'd probably go to the national one. So yeah, he's going to win the giveaway for farthest traveler.
That's awesome. All right. The last piece here is go to patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. And that's where you can find the tiers that allow me to help you coach your team. If you're pushing in the postseason, like a lot of people are, I think this comes out in 2 weeks. So the season may already be done for you. If it is, I have a tier in there to help you develop coaches. If you're not, I can come in and help you, self-scout or scout an opponent, whatever it is you need help with. There's a tier on there for you. So check it out at patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. Let's get into the conversation here. So we're talking buy-in. And I think it's very important that the way that both of you started your head coaching is different, right? Kenny took over a job that was down, that wasn't, I think it was a fairly new school, right, Kenny? It wasn't.
My first job's in Alabama, but they weren't very good either. So it goes along with what you're thinking.
Absolutely. So we're talking, getting buy-in from a school that isn't very successful and having to find coaches and build all that up. And then, Chris, he kind of defied all odds. I've always heard good jobs don't come open. And he kind of got to break that because Bristow came open for him this year. So, and from everything I see, it's a good job. Athletic director seems super supportive. It's been wonderful getting to know him. All the coaches on staff are like-minded and trying to learn and become better. So it seems like it truly was a kind of a blessing for that job to pop open for Chris. So let's talk about it, guys. So the first question has to be what is buy-in in your perception? And Chris, I'm going to let you start. You're the guest, so you get to speak first here. What is it? What do you call buy-in? What does that look like to you?
Well, every time I hear the word buy-in in regards to football, there's a quote and I have no idea where it came from, but I remember hearing it when I was a 25-year-old here at Bristow, 10 years ago, and knew everything there was to know about football. And it was like I felt like I had all these brilliant ideas, and I just had, I had all these fun like linebacker reads and things that I wanted to do, and it just didn't match up with what we were doing. But I heard this quote where it's like, if people can't weigh in, they can't buy in. And so I feel like I hold to that, to where I'm like, if you're here and you're a part of our program, I want you to know that your voice is heard and it's never shot down if if you've got some evidence to back it up, or if you're passionate about it, we're going to hear it. And so I think that trickles down not just like to coaches, because coaches obviously want to be heard because they're putting their name on this, but I think the kids want to be heard. We ask our captains for, everything from like who's going to be our practice captain to, what color pants we're wearing that week. And so people get that, they get that ownership. And that's one of our core values at Bristow football. So it's ownership. And if you feel like you've got a say in it, then you're going to feel like you have a stake in it. And, I spoke to multiple, mentors and former people that I've worked under, as an assistant coach. And they just said, listen, the first thing that, like Coach Montgomery at Bixby, he told me, he was like, he came in there and he swung a sword and it was my way, which was the old Jinx way. And he's like, he talked about it. They're going into 6A, which this is before the split. And they had 35 guys at their last day of summer pride. At Bristol, it'd be great, 35 guys, but like you're playing 6A football, that's not as good. And so he told me, he's like, build relationships first, like figure out who you're working with and, what makes them tick and what is it they want? What do they see as successful, and hear that, and then I'm going to put my own spin on it so it matches what we're trying to achieve, what my hope is to achieve as the head coach. But if, this senior linebacker who, maybe he was a little disgruntled by the previous leadership, if he knows I'm hearing his voice and I can flip it to where it works well, that we're all rowing the boat the same direction, then that's buy-in, and if you win the locker room through those kids, through the leaders of that locker room, then the others are going to follow, and you're just going to get more people bought into what you're believing. You're going to get more people going the direction you want it to go.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Kitty and I are actually in the middle of writing a book. It would hopefully can put more time towards that when the season gets over, but it's just alphas is going to be, I think, the title of it. Just talking about that same thing, right? Use those leaders in the locker room, whether it's the kid that's straight A's and goes to church and loves his family, or if it's the kid that you've got to scold 2 or 3 times a week to keep him between the guardrails, but you got to use those leaders, whoever they are, and you don't get to pick them.
No,
right? You don't get to make the leader.
A lot of times the leader's the one ripping cigs and making tackles. I mean, that's the dude. You better figure out how to use that guy. I'll speak to it kind of from the other end. Coach came into a successful program, and I love everything he talked about, because to me, he's talking about servant leadership. I mean, that's all he's really saying is find the guys and have servant leadership. And that's a little easier. It is a little bit easier when you're going into a place that already has some kind of structure. Like there's some kind of structure where now you might have a disgruntled guy here or a disgruntled guy here. But for the most part, the kids kind of know what it takes to be successful. And so I'm sure that, that's a little different than some guys and I know I walked into one where there was nothing. Like nobody had an idea what that looked like. Nobody knew what success looked like because they had been 0-27 and they had won, 4 or 5 games in 5 years. And so that was all they'd played. So there's just no vision. So it's a little bit tougher. So in my mind, here's what I put down was, I think that buy-in is vision that is met with actions. Like it's easy to put up on a board, we're going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this. But to me, it's getting kids to recognize that anybody can be motivated for a minute. It takes a lot more than that to be successful as a program, as a person. And I think a lot of times that's the hardest part when you go into a school that's not been successful. Is anybody can get motivated for 1 minute. That's why a lot of times guys go, we started the game off so good and then we fell apart. Anyone can do that. Anyone can play hard for a quarter. Can you play hard when you're losing and when things are going wrong and when every call is going against you? That's what we're looking for is, can we back up our vision with actions? And it has to start with you. Like, can you back up what you're saying you're going to do with actions? Then the next one I think on buy-in is, what value am I bringing to this program? Coach did a good job, I think, kind of talking about it, but what am I bringing that's going to make this person's life better? And it's got to be an individual basis, how you relate to your players. It's got to be a program basis. It's got to be with your coaches. What am I doing that's going to allow this coach the best opportunity to be successful? Like, what am I doing to bring value to them? And here's where I argue a lot with coaches is that can be scheme. Because I think a lot of times we think culture is on the right and scheme is on the left, and never the two shall meet. That's crap. Like, if you're really good at scheme, that can help your culture a ton because the kids recognize you're bringing value and giving them a chance to win. It could be fundamentals. It could be coaching the kids up. It could be more than that. It could be driving a kid home that doesn't have a ride, or going to watch a kid play another sport when you'd rather not be doing that because that's how you support the kid. So there's lots of things there, but how am I bringing value to the program and to my players? And coach did a good job. I would call that servant leadership. The last thing I've got on here is you got to ask yourself the question, like, do I care about these kids more than just what they can give me? And that's the difference in a selfish coach and a selfless coach. And I'll be honest, 80% of coaches tend to fall in the selfish category. Like, we care about our players when they're in our program. We do want what's best for them, but then they're gone and we never talk to them again. Or we care about our program, but if we're really honest, the kids that play more, we care about more. Like, that's the questions you have to really ask yourself as a coach. Have I matured to the point where I care about these kids more than what they can do for me? And that's hard. I was not there for a long time in my coaching career. Like, I did care about our kids. I loved our kids. But if I deep down in the recesses of my mind admitted what was true, I cared more for the kids that could bring more value to me than the kids that couldn't. And it takes a long time as a coach to mature to the point where you recognize that's not a good mindset. And that's hard to admit. It's hard to really say out loud, and we're doing here on a podcast, but you've got to be able to do that stuff because now that I've had my own children, I know you guys have your own children, you start looking at them different. You start looking at these kids a lot different than you did before, and I think that's the way you have to coach them. Coach them like they're yours. And you can be a disciplinarian if you want to, like Coach mentioned, swing your sword and come in crazy, or you can be Pete Carroll, and I don't know if he's ever even disciplined anybody. Like, you can be either one of them, but you need to be true to who you are and treat them like they're your own. And that to me is when you go into a program that's at the depths, that's where you got to start. And then from there, it's not going to be easy, but that's a good start.
Yeah, I look at the coaches are already on staff. I think that's a really good way to read. Kids are going to play ball, right? I mean, football players are going to play football. Now, you may lose a wrestler or a basketball player that decided to go single sport for a year or two. And I don't think that's as much on you as it is like maybe they just don't trust a new coach, right? We dealt with that at Stillwell when Coach Collins took over. There were some kids that just did not want to play for a new guy. In fact, that whole senior class almost didn't play. It was a very rough situation for a while. But the coaches that are there, I think the buy-in, what it looks like is they're willing to get into your system. They're willing to stay. They're not out shopping for jobs, right? And sometimes you see that. The guys are like, oh, I kind of want to be here, but also I'm going to apply to the 5 schools local, because I may want to move as well. I understand out there, look, maybe they applied for the head coaching job too and didn't get it, which is a rough place to be. But if they can get in, buy into your system, and help you move things in your vision, not in the last guy's vision, not in their vision, but in what you're trying to do, I think that's true buy-in. The kids, like I said, kids are going to play ball. Players are going to play. So, so the question 2 here, the question is there a difference, or why is there a difference when you're taking over a previously competitive or successful team versus someone that's kind of down in the dumps or in the depths, as Kenny called it? So, Kenny, I'm going to let you start first here. Just kind of what does that look like? Like, why is that a difference? Why do coaches, when you start applying for jobs, or maybe you get the interview or you get accept a job, why do you need to know where they've been previously to kind of dictate how you're going to get that buy-in?
Yeah, and I think this is where I had a massive advantage over coach. Like, I went into a school that you couldn't not jump over the bar. It was so low. Like sometimes, like those are the best jobs to take as a young coach because there's nowhere to go but up. And so in my opinion, I think coach is in a harder spot than I was in because he's walking into there's expectations. And I'm a firm believer it's much easier to go from bad to okay than it is to go from okay to great. Like that's the hardest move in any sport. So I don't envy coach on that one. I'm curious to hear what he's going to say. But I would say like when you walk in when the bar is super low versus when the bar is not as low, I think that a lot of times you have to celebrate things that you wouldn't think you would need to celebrate, like showing up to practice. You have to celebrate things like we played a team really close. I hate that. Like I want to win and I don't know how to handle that. But sometimes you got to be real. Like they were 0-10 and you got them to 4 wins. You might have done the best coaching job you've ever done. Like we're 9-0 right now. And I hope I'm getting better as a coach. I'm not so sure some of my best years weren't the years I managed to squeeze 4 or 5 wins out of some teams that, man, you were squeezing blood out of a turnip. I mean, you were just finding it where it wasn't there. So I think sometimes you have to be real and celebrate some things that maybe you didn't think you needed to celebrate. And so I think that's a big thing on coming into a really bad program. I think you also have to figure out ways to get the community involved. Like, I think that's something that if you're in an established program, you probably don't have to do. Like, I remember the first couple of years teaching them how to do pep rallies. Like, I didn't know that was part of my job, but apparently we were so bad, we didn't have any of that. So I'm having to kind of teach them a little bit of here's what school spirit's supposed to look like. Here's ways you actually show up and do theme nights and get people to come to the stadium. You think about almost like those minor league baseball that you're just trying to find ways to get people to fill the stands to support the kids. So I think those are things that probably go overlooked. If you're coming into an established program, you probably don't have to do any of that stuff. If you're coming into one that has had zero success, the pep rally at the beginning of the year where you introduce your team to everybody, that's a big deal, like a big deal. And you may have to be super involved in that kind of stuff. You probably are going to have to be much more involved in fundraising. And that's going to be at every program. The programs that are bad, it's really going to be something you've got to be involved in because let's be honest, you look good, feel good. If you can give your players good facilities and eventually you think that the play ought to rise up to that, so those are little things I would think that I had a harder time probably than coach did. But again, I don't envy. I think taking a pretty good job and trying to make it a great job is way harder. So I'm curious to hear what you got, Coach.
Yeah, go ahead, Coach.
Well, when like I said, it was 10 years ago that I first got my start in coaching as an assistant here. And that was at, one of the lowest points of Bristol football. It was when my predecessor with this job, when he was a year in and they had went 1-8. And then my first year here, I was coming from my high school, Stigler High School. They were at not necessarily the peak, but they were a really good football team that would usually win a first round game, but definitely would compete for a district championship and a home playoff game. So when I first got to Bristow, it was bad, and I didn't realize the battles that that Coach Jones must have been fighting over here because I was just focused on ball. And I'm like, our kids they got to do better. They got to do this. And it was like, that dude was probably dealing with all of the, like you talked about, kids showing up to practice, kids buying into, the message he's sending about supporting each other when it was really just all those problems that we had. We had a senior linebacker throw the head of a shovel through his best friend's window one day. And it's just and none of us knew about it, but the head coach dealt with it, and so I was here when it was low and I've watched it grow, and they've had some success in these past 10 years. And, but yeah, coming into it, you're right. There is a pressure that I feel as far as, they've won some playoff games. They in the 10 years that Coach Jones was here, there was a district championship in there that was absolutely earned. Wagner was in that district, but, the prototypical year for Bristow is you get close to 500, you beat someone you're not supposed to beat, and then not a lot of success in the playoffs, and so yeah, I'm like right now. You said like we're in week 10. There's a lot of pressure there, and I felt like and people called me crazy for like you said scheduling up, but I was much more interested in having our guys tested for our tough district play because I don't know that if we don't play one of the top teams in 4A, we're ready for those two district openers.
Yeah.
If our kids hadn't been tested against, some of the best teams in the class above us, those first two games where we got hit in the mouth and I think we had to come from behind for those first two district wins. And they were huge. They were great nights for our kids because it was success over a private school that I don't think many people gave us a chance. And our kids had to battle back against a really good team. And then, going down to a legend and, of the state of Oklahoma and getting a win. Again, being down, I think 2 touchdowns at one point. Or no, we were down 2 touchdowns with 2 minutes left in the first half. But,
Yeah.
but getting those kids to buy in and believe in that stuff, yeah, it's been difficult because the belief in we can bounce back from this, we can persevere from these things, and here we are, and our kids have felt a lot of success throughout this year and a lot of success against teams that are really good, but it's tough because we're hopefully going to finish this year 6-4. And it's like Coach Chamberlain said, we feel great. Like we feel like we've done a really good job and our kids feel good. But then, it's like, don't look at the record because the record shows that we're pretty on pace for, the previous, 3 or 4 years of Bristow football of being a 500 team. And, we're going to have a tough road test when we, in the first round of playoffs. But right now, the battle we're fighting as far as taking this thing from where we're at, and again, I don't know what my experience is with it yet because we're going to see what happens, is there's some, I don't want to call it like doom and gloom, but there's some kids that are kind of looking at it like, man, what a ride this was. And it's like, no, the ride is, we're at the peak right now, guys. We got it. We're still going, and so just keeping enthusiasm. It's like, we're going to keep playing music at practice and we're going to keep on keeping kids invested and believing in it because it is a school where wrestling is huge. And we were able to get some of those wrestlers out for football, but I know they're watching their buddies get ready for the preseason tournament this weekend. And I'm like, no, guys, we're rolling. And if you really want to feel what it's like, let's go get this thing done and let's go see what that success feels like. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's tough. And you're looking at it and you're looking at finishing, like I said, hopefully 6-4. And if you don't get out of the first round of playoffs, then the record's going to show us, like you said, the regular season, the record, the moments of this season that have been such a high point for these kids. It's not going to show it in the record, but I feel like our kids are having a good time. And but yeah, the way I dealt with it was we're going to play and we're going to continue to instill what we feel are or what we know are our core values and let that lead to success. Kenny, you talked about like how scheme can give kids confidence. And it's pretty wild because this is a team that for the last, I think 8 or 9 years was like, I mean, was it close to the flex bone capital of Oklahoma? Straight, pistol, flex bone, triple option. And that's what made them a hard night out for everybody. Yeah, well, there's really good athletes, but there's that one team on your schedule that runs the flex bone. You got to change your defensive scheme for it. And, and I heard people for years talk about how they didn't like it. We weren't using their speed or whatever. And so we bring in a guy that runs, multi-personnel and, we're supposed to be slinging the rock, but we still have a 210-pound running back that's pretty good. So most time we're in 12 personnel and we're running the stone, so yes, I feel like our scheme this year has been really good because our kids are having more fun. There's more skilled kids that have the opportunity to touch the ball. But yeah, I keep saying it, but like you saying like the pressure, yeah, I felt the pressure and I didn't at first. At first I was like, I'm doing a really good job with summer pride with our, strength and conditioning of the summer. we had a night of champions. It was packed. We had a purple versus gold scrimmage. And again, a great crowd. People were, oohs and ahs that we were throwing a football downfield, and it was all good. And then we get into that first game, and it's a rivalry game. We play them tough, and it's like, all right, maybe we got something. And then, yeah, that's just it's a deal where it's been such a fun ride. I feel like everyone's gotten better, the players, the coaches, everybody, but you're still looking at this pressure of, we got to get something done in the next couple of weeks. Otherwise, like, this season looks like, what did we go through just to end up kind of the same? But I know that regardless of the outcome of the next couple of weeks, I know that we've got kids that have bought into what we're doing, and that's going to, it's our job to make sure that it carries over, but it's going to carry over into our off season. And like I said, the goal is to continue to build this program in that light. Like, we're going to be strong, and our kids are going to have fun playing this game.
Yeah, man, I'd say, man, anybody on here listening, you can hear it with Coach. There's a real pressure when you take jobs, and it's hard. It's super hard. It's way harder than what I had to go through. Because when you're already good, it's hard to improve upon that. Because probably, let's be honest, and you were very nice to the coach before you. The guy before you probably knew what he was doing. Like, they were successful. They had some success. They won a conference title. You mentioned he was a good coach. You're following another good coach. It's hard to improve on that. That's just life. If you're coming into 0-10, probably you're going to be able to improve on that much quicker. And so the pressure tends to kind of go away. So if those of you guys are kind of thinking about these jobs this offseason, realize, like, there's nothing wrong. Obviously, you probably want to take a job where they are winning, because going from good to great is harder, but it's closer than going from terrible to great. So not a bad job, but recognize, and Coach probably a good when we get done here to give his phone number out. Y'all call him and talk about the pressure that's there, because it's legit and it's palpable, and you can even hear it in your voice.
We're talking about the difference here in those, getting the buy-in. I'll tell you, something I've learned as a coach is, like, how much records don't matter, right? We're talking about getting buy-in. You can't, and that's from parents, the community, admin, whatever. We're sitting here talking about a coach that's got a 9-0 and a coach that's got a 5-4 season in there this year. But honestly, you both have coached your tails off. We haven't really talked about, scheme can give kids confidence, but it's still Jimmy's and Joe's, right? And that's something I think I learned last year and this year more than ever, because I watched super successful coaches and programs that they're not undefeated because they just don't have the guys. You go into a game and you're outclassed at, 15 of the 22 positions. Like, there's not a lot you can do there. There's no scheme that helps you, that makes you better on the field, than that deal. So I think it's really weird as a coach now to look at records, because, man, it's just, there's so many other things where if you're a fan looking at the game, you're like, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. You know how angry I am that they're a terrible team this year? But that's the worst, because I know they have the players, right? When you look at high school teams, it just, this records just don't matter. When you are taking over a successful team, I think an advantage there versus one of these down and outs is just that, Chris, you kind of touched on this, but when they get hit in the mouth the first time, do they lay down and go, hey, here we go again, right? This is just how it was last year. It's how it's been every year. Maybe the other team gets up 14 points or 21, right? Do they have the gumption to come back and fight to get back in that game? And so I think, we talk about getting buy-in. It's getting kids to commit to what you're doing, so that doesn't have to happen, right? That you don't have to go through that, oh crap, here we go again scenario in every single game. Games are tough, man. Winning a football game is really, really hard. And if your kids are quitting at the first sign of adversity, that's just going to make it that much harder. So I think that is an advantage to getting that pressure, right? Pressure is a privilege. I think Coach put that out in a message just the other day, like last week or something. But yeah, I think that's all kind of part of the game. Last question here. And I know we've touched on this a little bit, but I want to hear just from your like from day one, what were you doing to build this buy-in from your staff, from your kids? Uh, Maybe it is parents in the community. And Chris, we're going to start here so that Kenny gets to close us out. And then Kenny, I forgot about the quote of the week. So before we get out of here, we'll have you do the quote of the week too. So Chris, how you came in day one. What did you start doing to get people on your side to help everybody row in the same direction?
Well, like go back to the fact that I think everyone in town knew who I was. I was the guy, the football coach that lived in town that left to go to the best football team in the state of Oklahoma every single day. My wife was the cheer coach, and there's a lot of kids on this team right now that had older brothers that I was around. I've always been a relationship guy, and I feel like that's what's kind of carried over, here. And a lot of my best friends, a lot of guys that were at my wedding, they're still on this staff. And when the job came open, they were asking if am I going to put in for it? Am I going to go for this thing? And I was like, are you going to stay? Because I want guys around me that care about this thing. And so I made sure to reach out to those guys. And then there were one of the cool things that happened at Bristow, and this is not something I did as much as it was, there's a lot of guys on our staff that are volunteers that just came out and said like, hey, I want to help. And I'm like, all right. And then I had a list of questions. And I just said, all right, why? And the final was like, why do you want to help? And you just find a bunch of guys that, here in Bristow, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, this was a powerhouse in Oklahoma. This was a 23 district championships in 27 years, 3 state runner-ups and 3 state titles type thing, where those people are still here. And so, and some of those guys play ball, and some of them, it was their uncle that played on the 85 state championship team, and that they bleed purple and they want to be a part of it. So like, then you're in, you know what I mean? And so instantly by giving those guys again, buy-in and getting people associated with the program, having conversations with them, that gets buy-in from that family. Now that family's on board with what I'm trying to do. And so from a community standpoint, if someone asks me to speak in an event, I'm going. And I've got a PowerPoint, and I'm passionate about this. This is what I do, and I'm gonna say it to you. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna show you my slideshow, and I'm gonna get after it. I'm gonna show people like how much we care about this and what our goals are. And I've gotten great reception from people as far as that. And I really took to heart when multiple coaches told me like build relationships first. The first people I spoke to were, it was the players. And I said, if you think you want to play football, you meet Coach Cole in the library on this day. And I came in and I did not hammer them with, this is what we're going to do offensively. This is how we're going to lift weights on Saturdays, and we're going to do this. I was like, no, we're going to have a good time. This is who I am. This is like my story. And kids relate to my story. And, in the town of Bristow, there's a lot of kids that, single moms or whatever, like I had, that's like, all right, this guy's one of us. This guy talks, you know what I mean? And so building relationships super early was big for me. And then again, if you wanted to be a coach at Bristow this year, I let you be a coach at Bristow this year, and gave people jobs and said, be master of your domain. And it's like you said, Coach Chambo, you've gotten to watch this from August from the outside, but the growth even before that with some of these guys with learning basic stuff was incredible. And then again, by having that diversity as far as backgrounds from our guys on staff, that's more people for the kids to relate to. There's a coach on staff for every kid that every kid can latch onto. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I recognize that, but I can build a relationship with a kid to where we have a respect for one another, even if I'm not their favorite coach, even if they don't necessarily like me. Like, I have a relationship with all of our guys to where like I sit down and talk with them. I'm lucky enough that I'm in the weight room with every one of our football guys, for at least 35, 40 minutes a day. And so I make it a point to just talk to those kids, make it a point to be seen in the hallways at the high school, even though it's out of my way because our football field and our campus are quite separated. But that was my day one stuff, was to come in and build relationships with football players. And then again, in our summer strength and conditioning program, traditionally at Bristow, it was football has theirs in the morning, and whatever, other sports want to jump in, do it over in that other weight room. We made it a point where I was like, no, every kid that wants to lift, since we're starting in school strength and conditioning, you come in and lift, you're going to get to know me. And so I have an investment in all sports through that. And so I have relationships with kids in all sports, and so it's really, it's a cool thing to see those kids, those basketball kids, those cross country kids, again, in the student section. Like, they want that. Kids want those relationships, because then now they're invested in the football program, and that's really important to us.
Hey, we've talked recruit the hallways before on both podcasts, I'm pretty sure, and like that's kind of overlooked. Like, I'm always a biology teacher, and sure, I get to talk to kids in biology, but we have an agenda. We've got stuff I've got to teach. Go run the weight room, right? That's a whole new reason to go get certified to be the weight room guy. That's awesome. It's a really good way to recruit.
I think the first event after I was announced that I went to a wrestling duel the night that I was announced as the head football coach. And I was at a wrestling duel when the board meeting was going on. And I was down there, and that's how we got a handful of those wrestlers. Was like, I'm watching you, dude. Like, you need to play football now. And so some of our best football players are wrestlers, because that's something that translates. And there were kids that, for whatever reason had been like, oh, I need to specialize. It's like, no, come on, just have fun. So,
yeah, for sure. Kenny, I'm gonna let you close it out. So I'm gonna give my 2 cents here, because number one, going after the legend is hard. Talk about, we've already talked a little bit about scheme tonight, and I think I've come out multiple times. I'm not really a proponent of the antiquated schemes. I'm not a big flex bone guy. I think that there's too many disadvantages. Yes, you have to make other defenses align, but there's enough stuff out there with the internet age now that you aren't confusing anyone, right? They can go find a defense and they can defend the flex bone or wing tee or whatever. And I know Kenny runs the gun tee, but guys, I've watched his film. If you haven't, find some of it, because sure, it's old school wing tee from the shotgun, but the guys, he can sling it around. The RPOs has opened that up. I think that has knocked off the antiquated title. So if you're wanting to stick with one of those older systems and spruce it up a little, jump to fbcoachsimpson.com and get the gun tee system. But I think that's a big part, is one, being knowledgeable in your craft, right? We talk about leadership all the time as well, and how we do that in the military. A big part of that is you've got to be a professional. You got to know what you're talking about to get that buy-in from the kids. Because if you're just coming in and you're still trying to learn everything yourself on the X's and O's side, you may lose some there. But having a system that opens it up for multiple types of players, right? It's great to run the flex bone if all you've got's a fullback and a couple scat backs, and that's what you need to do. But man, if you've got some kids that can catch, and you've got a cat that can wing it, defensively, if you can run multiple schemes, you'll cover 3, cover 1. If you can go blitz a little bit, kids love that stuff, right? I bet if you put the sticks at a NCAA 25 or Madden or whatever, kids aren't calling base defense. Look, I do as a coach, because I know that's where it's at. Let your kids read, but they want to send heat. They want to do crazy stuff on defense. On offense, they're trying to throw 4 verts all day long. They really don't care about power. They don't understand that it's the greatest play in football. And although I may like duo more, so that crap don't mean anything to them, right? So if you've got a system that opens up a playbook, let them have some fun. I think that's a great way to get buy-in. And then, Chris, is basically what you did in giving coaches ownership. Hire people that know what they're doing. Grab a couple of young ones that have no idea, so that you can start putting someone under your wing and building that next generation of coaches. Because if you're really good at this, those cats are going to leave, right? That's what I want as a coach. I've been lucky enough to serve under some great head coaches, but someday I want to hire a new guy and raise him up and help him become great and go on and be a coordinator somewhere and go on and be a successful head coach. Like, that coaching tree is real for me. Back to Coach Kenny Ridley, who I've never got to coach with, but was my DC in high school. And he talks about how we're all on the Bud Wilkins coaching tree, right? And so, kind of doing that and building that up, I think that's big time, especially day one, so that you're not running anybody off. Everyone has a job, and you kind of get other people helping, right? You've basically got a small army at your fingertips if you let the coaches and the players go out and work for you to build your image and build your culture. As long as you handle that right, I think that you can start off to a big advantage, especially if you started at day one. Coach Simpson, we'll let you close us out here on how you think starting on day one should look.
Yeah, I thought Coach had a really good answer too. I mentioned all the stuff with community I think is important. I heard an old coach say a long time ago, and I've always kind of remembered it. He said, if you win the moms, you win the team. Because unfortunately, the society we live in now, you want to get the dads on your side, and you do need to, but all of them, for the most part, have moms. And so you figure out a way, and in my mind, that's just symbolic of the community. What am I doing to win the community, specifically the parents of the kids? Because those are going to be the ones that ultimately are going to be around the dinner table supporting or not supporting you. And they're going to be the ones that ultimately run you out of town or keep you in town when things don't go well. So what am I doing to win the community? Coach mentioned several things he did. I think those are all important. Show up at events, host different events there's so many free wins that coaches, I think, don't take, like a night of champions where you're lifting weights, community pep rallies. We do a mother-son date night, feeding the team. Like, to me, those are like easy wins as a coach. You're undefeated in those events. Like, you can't really mess them up. So do them, and be involved. And so I think that's important. So win the community. To me, the next part of that would be win the administration. There's lots of things you can do to get the administration on your side, or there's a lot of things you can do to get them not on your side. Take care of discipline within the team. Make sure they understand that, hey, I do care about their grades. I am interested in making sure that we behave. What are things that are your administration? Let's be honest. They don't really care if you win or lose. They care about how many problems come across their desk due to your team. So what are you doing to keep those away from them? Winning helps. It does help for sure. But what am I doing to make sure they're not having deals with, hey, the football team was out there doing yada, yada, yada in the parking lot? What am I doing to kind of get them on my side? So I think you got to win the community. You got to win the parents. You got to win the admin. I think obviously the players fall in that. No doubt. I think most coaches kind of know you better figure out a way to get the players on your side. There's lots of ways to do that. I think you got to be, and I think the main way to do that is through servant leadership. We've already kind of talked about that. Bring value to these kids. Let them know you care about them more than just the football coach. Showing up at wrestling duel would be a good way to do that. Showing up at basketball games, good way to do that. Showing up at whatever other event is a good way to do that. If they have a family event going on and you've been invited, try to go. There's those little things that should be common sense, but a lot of times as coaches, we want to go home and work is work and home is home. I think coaching is a ministry. I think when you get in it, you are basically there to minister to these kids and to make them better people. And so I don't think you can separate personal and professional. I think it just kind of is what it is. And if you're lucky enough to have a spouse that goes with you like mine does, sounds like coaches does as well, makes it a lot easier. So those are big things of servant leadership. The last thing I'll kind of hit on here before I get to the quote is find the alphas, like find the leaders in all these areas. You cannot touch everybody's life. It's great, Coach mentioned having a good relationship with everybody. That's important. I really need to have a relationship with the 5 or 6 leaders of the team that control everybody else. I refer to those as alphas. Like, I refer to those as the 5 guys that they kind of control the locker room. Maybe it's 3 guys, maybe it's 8 guys, but it's somewhere in that world. These guys run everybody else. Those are the guys that I've got to win. Like, if they are on my side, we don't have to agree with everything. We don't have to have the same personality. I got to figure out a way to make sure that all of us are pulling the same direction. And if they're not, that's the kid you got to get rid of. Like, you don't probably have to get rid of the kid that no one pays attention to that sneaks out of practice and doesn't show up. But there's the one that everybody sees. And so he's either got to row the direction with you or you got to cut him loose. I think there's also alphas in the community. If you look around, you can figure it out pretty quick. They need to be on your side. There's alphas in the administration. They need to be on your side. Find the leaders, make sure that they're with you because they will carry your message to everybody else because you physically can't handle everything. So find the ones that matter. And Daniel did a good job kind of mentioning they're not always the ones you wish they would be. I'm not telling you to go find your 4.0 kid, get him on your side. That may not do anything. It might be the kid that, is 4 natty lights away from playing guard. That guy, you got to get him on your side, and say, hey, look, I'm not here to get on you, to judge you, whatever, but I need you to pull the same direction as me and help these 3 or 4 other kids that are going to follow you, because you are a leader. And so I think you got to find those alphas on the team, in the community, in the school building, and they may not be the one. It could be the band director. Man, that'd be a tough one. But you better get him on your side. Like he's the alpha. He swings a lot of people one way or another. He better be on your side. And we don't get to pick who they are, but we need to make sure that we're aligning with them just because that's the way you can kind of pull everybody else. So Daniel, we're going to try to do a whole book on this. You are giving some great analogies here. So we'll see how this goes. If it's good, Daniel probably wrote a lot of it. If it's not, and it's bad analogies, it's probably me. But that's kind of my mindset is when you're going in, find those people and align yourself with the right ones, and you'll have a much better chance at success. Not a guarantee, but a better chance.
I think it's awesome from what I'm seeing is this culture swing in coaching. And I've still been around some bad coaches, some guys that don't believe like what the 3 of us are sitting here talking about, and probably people that listen to this podcast probably think, and that's that, transformational or relational versus transactional, coaching. And I cherish the fact that I was brought around guys like Kenny and Joe and Bill Blankenship last year was a huge one for me, right? These guys that truly care about the hearts and the futures of every kid on their team versus what can they do for me? Because I've been around that as well. Whether it's the coaches in the room or the kids in the room, whatever, I've kind of seen that both ways. So I'm really glad that we can be on a podcast that's going to be listened to by, 5,000, 10,000 people. And we're able to say things like care about your kids. And we don't have to sit up here and just say getting too tight and run power again, right? Like we can talk about the real things in coaching because that's the crap that matters. We all know that you got to go out and win some games, right? You can't go 0-10 every year and keep that job. At some point, you're going to have to figure it out and win the games. But to get the culture and the buy-in started, I think it's an absolutely wonderful place to start. Guys, we pretty much closed it all out there. Coach Simpson, let's do the quote of the week here. I'm sorry I forgot it in the beginning. I was just super excited to get to this conversation. So what is our quote?
Well, now that I'm looking at this, I'm realizing I probably should. The quote is great, but there's no way I'm going to say this dude's name right that quoted. It's Norman Schwarzkopf.
Yeah,
pretty close.
I
don't know it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of silent P, F's, and W's in that last name, so I did the best I could there. But quote is a great one. The quote talks about courage. It says, "True courage is being afraid and going ahead and doing your job anyhow. That's what courage is." We talk to our players all the time about courage or toughness, whatever you want to categorize it. In my opinion, is knowing this is going to hurt and doing it anyway, or knowing I could fail and doing it anyway. Like that's courage. Smoking a scout team, dude, is just you being a prick. Like there's a difference in courage is I'm a corner coming up and taking on a guy and I've got to make a play, or I'm an inside linebacker and I'm taking on a pulling guard and I know it's going to hurt, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's courage, And I think that's something we want to always work with our kids. And I think it's something we can do as coaches as well is courage sometimes is taking the heat for something you didn't necessarily do. Like in your learn as you coach longer, Daniel hit the nail on the head. Players win and lose games. But as a coach, you can't say that. Like there's times you have to take the heat. You might have coached it as well as you know how to coach it. And that fill in the blank screwed it up and you lost. And you know what? It's your fault. And that's just kind of how the world is. And I think that's sometimes that's where courage as a coach is stepping up and telling your kids. And then it can be truthful. It can be, I really did hurt us here. Like, I really did mess us up here. So to me, that's the quote of the week is courage. I thought that might fit a little bit in here, but mainly I just love any quotes by guys named Norman.
There we go. That extreme ownership goes a long ways too, right? And tying it all back into this conversation. All right, Coach, let's get to our last piece here. What not to do as a coach. Can you give us our lesson for the week?
Yeah, what not to do as a coach is, and we've been hammering on this, is or what to do as a coach, I guess either way. But what not to do as a coach basically is only care about kids that bring value to you. Like, only care about kids that bring value to your program or tie their self-worth to their athletic ability. I think a lot of times it's really hard not to do that. If we're honest, if we're really honest, it's difficult not to tie people's self-worth to what they bring to you because we're naturally inherently selfish. That's just human nature. The what not to do is that. Like, the harder thing to do is make sure that our kids recognize we value them for who they are, not what they can do for us. And Daniel hit the nail on the head. That's transactional versus transformational coaching, which is very easy to say or tweet or do whatever. It's really hard to live out.
It sure is. Sweet. Let's go ahead and close it out here, guys. Sponsors, if you haven't reached out to Mark or Ryan over at A Sports, do that. Chris, I'll text you their number here in a minute. New book 6.0, right? Gun T 6.0 is out, so jump into that. If you haven't signed up and got that early bird pricing for one of the Gun T clinics, get on it. If you want to see me stumble and bumble and fumble through something for about an hour, go to Boston. I'll show you some really cool places to have great seafood afterwards, so that'll be fine. There's a benefit there to listen to me ramble. Social media, Chris, where can we find you? If your coach wants to reach out and say, hey, dude, where I get a sick hat, or how about a bear on a flag? Tell me about the bear flag. Where can they reach out to you at?
I'm at Coach S. Cole 51 on Twitter, and I think it's the same on Instagram and things like that. But yeah, I'd love to chat it up. We're also at Bristow Purple Pirate Football. Bristow PPFB, I think, is the Twitter handle on there. So I'm in charge of both of those, even though our offensive coordinator makes all our graphics. Well, our offensive coordinator and Coach Chamberlain. So
it's he give him all the glory. He's good at that stuff, man. If somebody wanted to email you, is there an email they can use that would get them directly to you?
Yeah, my school email is probably going to work best. I used to be really good at my personal, but not so much anymore. But it's ccole@bristow.k12.ok.us. And if you send me an email and I email you back, my phone number is attached to it. But yeah, I'm easy to reach. Not the best at this head coaching thing. Yeah, I'm definitely still learning, so I'm probably going to ask you some questions, but I'd love to talk tight front match quarters. I feel a lot more confident in doing that stuff.
There we go. Sweet. You can find me at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter /X, Facebook. Look up my name, Daniel Bryce Chamberlain. You can find me on there talking a little bit of smack about football. I basically stay off Facebook, though. Email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I have a website by the same name. Go there. You can find the podcast, and eventually it will turn into like a business page. I don't really feel comfortable selling football yet, but we're going to give it our go. And then over at the Patreon, if you're needing an additional coach, you're needing help, you're needing to train a coach, a player, whatever it is, there's a tier there for you. So jump over and see what's going on Patreon. And a baby YouTube that is, Kenny, I'm still so jealous looking at yours. I have no idea how you've grown it so huge. But I'll keep putting little things out there. So maybe one day I can strive to be as legendary as you on YouTube. Where can we find you at, boss?
Tens of followers. Yeah. Now, all things FB Coach Simpson. So FB Coach Simpson at Twitter. You can go to YouTube and just look up my name, and there'll be something that'll pop up. During COVID, I put a lot of videos out. That's how you do stuff like that, Daniel. And then fbcoachsimpson.com is a place to go if you want to learn Gun T, 3-4 Swarm, you want to get free stuff from headsets. We try to put a bunch of material over on that website.
Awesome. The podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. Coach Cole, we want to thank you once again for staying up late on a Wednesday night and jumping in. I'd greatly cherish your input here and I think it's pretty cool to watch you grow as a coach. What little bit I've known you. So thanks for the opportunity there at Bristow and for coming on and talking
I
with us.
appreciate you guys having me. I was going to say, thanks to Coach Simpson, man. You like to talk about COVID. You guys got us. You guys like you, man, putting that stuff out there, man. You made it worth it. You made it, made time pass by a lot faster. And I think I've been in the defensive coordinator academy and stuff like that for like 6 or 7. As long as it's been there, like first time it popped up, I was like, I'm in, and I'm sharing stuff with guys. And so yeah, you've been a big mentor to me from just the stuff you put out there, and I think it's gold, man. I really appreciate stuff you do.
Well, man, now that you're a head coach, we may have to get you in one of those academies, so be ready.
Cool.
I want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to shows so you always know when the new episodes are out. It's time to start leaving reviews. If you've listened to an episode or two and you've dealt with all of our rambling, the best thing you can do now is just give us 5 stars and curse other coaches to have to listen to our rambling. Especially if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, those are the best place to leave a review. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.